Wolfie is fine. He's just fine.
Who's the dipshit now, you jock douchebag?
Welcome back, Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good friend, sometimes lover, sometimes snuggler, sometimes hugger. Hi, Frank. Say hello, Ty.
Hello, Ty.
Sometimes you want to be like, when I say hello, Ty, you're like, don't fucking tell me what to do. I'll say hello if I want to say hello. Do you want to rebel against that sometimes?
Yeah, I'm easily programmed.
Oh, okay. You're like the T800?
I grew up in a cult.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I just do whatever I'm told.
What are we talking about today, Ty?
Maybe the second greatest sequel of all time. And what's weird about it is the two greatest sequels ever made were both made by the same guy. You got Aliens as James Cameron's masterpiece of military sci-fi, and then you got Terminator 2 as his masterpiece of cyborg death machine from the future.
That is interesting because sequels are tricky, and rarely does something as absolutely groundbreaking, incredible, the highest level of movie making like Alien and like Terminator, can somebody come and do a sequel. And in some ways I go back and forth. Like in some ways, I wouldn't say it's better than the original, but it's what you wanted from the original, but also different. And in the ways it's different, you're happy that it's different in that way.
So the original is an amazing piece of filmmaking because it was done so on a budget. He didn't have any money. He was shooting almost, not quite, but almost guerrilla style to shoot that movie. And the fact that the movie
he shot
is
it like when they were shooting?
The fact that movie is as good as it is, given the constraints it was filmed under, is astonishing. And it's a fantastic movie. The second movie is what happens when you give James Cameron a bunch of money, a bunch of time, all the technology, and he's able to make a polished version of the movie he wanted to make. So the original is gritty and dark and full of hard edges, and the sequel is polished and high tech and peak filmmaking. And the fact that both of those styles of movie came out of the same guy really tells you a lot about his range as a director. Yeah, John Carpenter, if you don't give him any money or any time, he makes amazing
masterpiece.
Shit.
Yeah.
The minute you give him any money or any time,
he makes the Invisible Man.
He makes the Invisible Man.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys who can make a big budget polished movie, but don't have the chops for the stripped down budget guerrilla filmmaking style movie. They just don't have the chops for that. Cameron has both. He can do both. He can do either one.
Do you remember, watching this movie, I always try to put myself back in the mindset of when this movie came out. And this movie was a phenomenon before it came out.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that Guns N' Roses song where it had the video? And
You Could Be Mine.
You Could Be Mine. And they run it, So I remember like back then, like the videos, movies in the videos would like have movies in them and they would pump you up for those movies and there would be clips of it and you would just be so on board. And I know you were and I was such massive fans of the original Terminator. But there is some movies that are sacred where we hear they're making a sequel and you immediately
and
just got a bad taste. You're just pissed off. You just got a bad taste in your mouth. And then there's some movies, I guess it's if the original filmmaker, like when James Cameron is involved and you're like, okay, I'll give this a shot. But for whatever reason, this movie, everybody was on board right away. Everybody was on board. And that is a recipe to fail. Because the expectations could not be fucking higher. And it was it was at a time when we had a shared culture. You had one massive TV show that everybody could talk about. This was still within that frame of having a shared culture. So what was fun about this is multi-generational. Your friend's dad was excited about Terminator 2. You were excited about Terminator 2. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was thrilled and excited to see. And the fact that I went to the theater and sat down and it exceeded my expectations where I was like, fucking Terminator. I was so pumped for so long. And then you watch it and it ends up being better than what you expected. That is such a rare thing.
Yeah, it was one of those movies that like I went and saw it because my wife and I at the time didn't watch a lot of the same kind of movies, although she's definitely come over to my style of movie in the years since. But I went and watched it by myself, and then I went home and I got Janae and I went back to the theater and watched it with her.
You're like, God damn
you're
it.
going to want to watch this.
If you're going to be married to me, this is some movie you got to see.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of a hot take that, maybe we can get into it, but I remember when I saw this movie for the first time, I couldn't tell you which one I liked better, the first one or the second one. Now, recently, now that I'm, an adult and I watch these with my kids, I watched the first one and I watched the second one. And now it's clear I like the first one better.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the reasons why, but my kids, no question, loved the second one.
Yeah.
And I think the story choices that James Cameron made, and we might want to just, set up the movie and like the major differences, but the story choices that he made that made this film be a little bit different was what was needed at the time, and it worked, and it was very fresh. But when I go back and watch it now, the turning it into an amusement park, the kind of Disneyfication of the Terminator and the Hasta La Vista's baby and all that shit, it did not work for me like it did when I was a kid. And there was something so sacred about Arnold Schwarzenegger in the original Terminator. There's something so dark and so scary and so compelling. And I think that aspect is lost in the second one. And they're making it for kids, and they turned into the PG world where the other one was hard R.
No, it was R. It was not made for kids.
Was it?
It was an R. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, but it felt like that. Like I go back and watch now, and it's like, some of the one-liners of, and I just want to get this out, and then we'll go through the movie, and I love the movie, but some of the one-liners in the movie that were connected to John Connor, I understood, because he's a learning machine. John Connor can teach him hasta la vista and all that stuff. But I felt like the one-liner that undermined the whole thing is at the end when he stands up and he's beat up and he's all, all in parts, and he goes, "I need a vacation." And it just hit me the wrong way. I'm like, fucking, come on.
Well, because you've never heard anyone else say it.
Yes.
So he wasn't copying anyone.
Yes. And it didn't come from character. It didn't come from him.
So it is, when you're rewatching it, that is a very out of place line.
Right.
Yeah. Now I could see John saying, "You need a vacation." Like the kid saying it to him would have been okay. But having him say it is very odd.
When you started watching it, did you know, I can't remember if I knew or didn't know. I think we probably all knew. Did you know that Arnold would be a good guy in this one? Or were you surprised in the movie?
So if I remember correctly, one of the scenes that they show in the Guns N' Roses video is Arnold riding the motorcycle with John on the back, hanging on to him. That kind of gives it away, right? Like, I mean, if he's riding on the motorcycle with the Terminator, he's probably not his enemy anymore, right? And I think also I had seen like that, because there was so much hype for this movie, so much hype, and they did like making of videos even before it came out. Like you could watch and they'd be like, "This amazing stunt was done for the and they showed the stunt where the motorcycle jumps off into the LA aqueduct and Arnold's on it and it slams down, and they showed them doing that stunt. And so I'm like, oh, okay, so it's Arnold's clearly a good guy in this, right? If he's trying to save John. So I mean, I think I knew. It did spoil that. But the thing is, having that spoiled doesn't really hurt the movie.
No, I don't think it hurts the movie, but I do think it's a great reversal if you didn't know,
I think this movie was too big. Even before it came out, it was too big to keep any secrets.
What were your overall thoughts in the rewatch? I know what you thought when you watched it originally.
Oh, I still think it's an amazing movie. I think it's incredibly well made. Cameron's direction, so he's got a lot of fame for being a writer director, and he writes his own stories and all that kind of stuff. But and he's a good writer, so I'm not taking that away from him. But his gift is he has such an eye for how to attack a scene visually. And by that I mean, like, what is the most interesting angle and movement of a camera you can do to capture a thing that's happening in a scene? He just has a natural gift for that. He was doing it clear back in the first Terminator. So clearly it's just the way his brain works. And some directors have that and some don't. And just the way this is shot, if you just watch it strictly from a filmmaking perspective, the way the camera moves through every scene, like I'm watching him and going, I can't think of a better angle for this. I can't think of a better camera move. And having now made years of TV and having sat in the editing booth when director's cuts of episodes come out and that kind of stuff, and you're kind of editing the episode together, now my brain naturally I'm watching stuff and go, God, I wish they had shot this from this other angle. I wish, because, you know, you train yourself to think that way when you're editing director's cuts, right? You're like, oh man, I wish he had gotten the reverse on this, or man, I wish he had gotten, like, this would have been so much better from a low angle or a high angle, whatever. Your brain is always looking for that. I never have that moment when I'm watching this movie and other James Cameron movies. It's like, whatever the best possible camera angle is, that's the one he shot. That's the one that's in the movie. And I'm never like, oh man, this would have been so much better with a low angle. Like if it's better with a low angle, that's what he shot. That's what's in the movie.
Yeah.
And I watched this movie and I'm just blown away by the skill of the filmmaking in it.
Right.
And there's story things that I may not have done. And like you mentioned, that line that kind of throws you out. It's the dialogue's gets a little too jokey, I think, at certain points. I probably wouldn't have gone that jokey. I probably would have kept it a little darker. And tonally, there's some weird tonal shifts because Sarah Connor is playing so dark.
Yeah.
And Arnold and the kid are playing so light that sometimes it feels a little jarring, the tonal shift between the two. But no matter what is happening story-wise and dialogue-wise and all that stuff, the filmmaking is astonishing. This is an almost perfectly directed movie.
Yes. I think there's the objective and the subjective. And I think a lot of what I say, about the Terminator and everything, that is my personal taste from my personal experience and perspective from the movie. But if you look at it objectively, it's no question it's a better movie. He has way more money, way more time. He can really...
And he knows how to use those things.
Yes.
Yeah. He knows where to spend his money and where to spend his time.
Do you want to set the movie up before we jump in?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure everybody, spoilers, if you haven't seen Terminator 2, what the fuck have you been doing with your life?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the only possible sequel to Terminator because they keep remaking the same movie over and over again. But again, a machine comes back from the future to kill Sarah Connor because that's Skynet only has one move. It just keeps making the same move over and over again. Skynet sends another machine back to kill Sarah Connor, but this time that machine is so advanced and so lethal that they know the people in the future, the rebels fighting Skynet in the future, know that they cannot defeat it by sending a human soldier back. So they reprogram one of the original Terminators, one of the T-800s, the Arnold Schwarzenegger model, and send it back to protect her. So you wind up with, now the battle is an older Sarah Connor who has given birth to John Connor, Reese's son, and she is being hunted by the most advanced, technologically advanced Terminator Skynet has, and protected by the older model Terminator that hunted her in the first.
I don't want to get, you and I kind of have, there's a policy with time travel where I think it's cheap to nitpick time travel stuff.
Because it never makes any sense.
Because it never makes any sense. Because to my knowledge, time travel doesn't work. So we don't really know the rule, or, we don't know the rules around real time travel. So that doesn't make any sense. Because the fun of the story is just going with it and allowing, because if you think any time travel, if you look at Back to the Future, if you look and you really think about it, there's always going to be contradictions and things like that.
Are you telling me that when somebody's getting erased from the past, their picture doesn't slowly disappear?
But what a great ticking clock, though. What a creative ticking. Anyway, I do have a few questions about the time travel. Did the T-1000, I'm trying to remember, because we watched these with the kids back to back. Did the T-1000, was he naked like Arnold? Did he drop off?
He doesn't get clothes until he kills the cop. And then he turns into the cop uniform.
But he is liquid metal. So I thought only living tissue can go through time travel.
So the idea behind that, I saw an interview with Cameron, when this movie came out, and he talked about that the liquid metal is able to mimic the electrical. Because in the first one, he's like only the electrical field given off by living tissue or whatever. Mm-hmm. I didn't build the fucking thing. But they said that like the mimetic polyalloy can mimic the electrical field of living tissue, and that's why it's able to go back.
That actually really satisfies me. I'm glad that you remember that interview. And then, but why didn't he just project some clothes on him? Like, why did he have to go through the naked thing? Because the clothes are a part of...
Remember, he can only mimic things that he's sampled by physical contact.
So he never touched clothes?
As soon as he stabs that cop, immediately he throws himself a cop uniform.
But there's no clothes in the future? He can't touch some clothes?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he was just in a bottle when he got sent back.
Anyway, I would be
a bottle of alloy, and then they sent it back.
I would be annoyed at myself if I was listening to this and I was asking these questions. I hate that kind of shit. But I was just like, why is he can do whatever he wants. Why is he naked?
You needed to go touch a cop and get a cop uniform sample.
Now, what naked scene did you prefer from? Oh, which movie did you prefer? Are you a Terminator 1 guy or Terminator 2? If you had to pick one,
I don't think it's a fair comparison. I think they're very different. I think they're about the same thing, but one is a low budget, dark, gritty sci-fi, like early 80s late night sci-fi kind of movie that just is better than the genre it comes from. And the other one is an example of a guy with a ton of money and a ton of time making one of the most polished sci-fi movies ever. I mean, I think they're both amazing in their own way.
But if you're sitting down on Saturday night and you want to, and you can watch Terminator or Terminator 2, which one?
It depends on what mood I'm in.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in a mood for dark and gritty, I'm going to watch the first Terminator.
If
I'm in a mood for fancy, high polished, high concept sci-fi, I'm going to watch the second one.
So I get that argument for Aliens. I think they're different enough that you can't really choose one or the other. I feel like a Terminator and Terminator 2 are enough alike where you can have a favorite over the other one. You can have a favorite child over the other, because they're the same genre. Just one is way more polished and way more money, but a different.
I'm impressed by them for different reasons. I'm impressed that the first one is so much better than it has any right to be.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed by the second one because it's clear that this is a director who started out making low budget stuff, and when he got big budgets, knew what to do with them.
But this movie, Arnold's such a big star that he didn't show his dong in this. And I thought that's disappointing.
No dong. But you do get a much better side butt shot.
Oh, do you?
Maybe so if you like side butt, Arnold definitely gives you a lot of side butt.
What naked Arnold did you like better? The scene. It's the same thing. The first one was dead serious in what Arnold was doing. The second one was like, okay, this scene, so we're gonna have a little bit of fun with it. Which one did you prefer?
Oh man, that's a tough question because I love Bill Paxton in the original.
That's the tiebreaker for me.
Yeah, Bill Paxton's amazing. Like, this dude's couple cans short of a six pack. I mean, that's great, right? You cannot complain about that. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But him walking into the biker bar in the second one, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to enjoy there.
Yeah, I know. It's fucking great. They're both great.
Yeah, and I love the dude he talks to. Yeah, you forgot to say please.
Yeah, but the first one is a complete surprise because it's like,
the second one, what's going to happen.
So the first one is a complete surprise because you didn't know what was going to, you were kind of blown away what's going to happen. The second one is the anticipation because some shit's about to happen and you're like, when to go and when he goes, the guy goes, give me your clothes, your boots, and what does he say? Give me your
clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Yeah, give me your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. And then the guy starts laughing like, motherfucker, you forgot to say please. But what I love about that scene is people are coming up like one-on-one, like stabbing him in the chest. He's ripping that guy's head off and doing this and everything. If I was the third guy, right? If I was the third guy and I saw this naked man come in and just start murdering folks
and blow, blast through the first two guys, you'd be like, no, it's cool, dude.
I'm sitting that one out,
Yeah, I agree.
I'm headed for the door,
It is funny because like one by one, they line up to get whooped by Arnold. And to be fair, there is an escalation, right?
Yeah.
Like, They keep trying more what they assume will be more effective attacks, and they keep failing. But yeah. After the first two guys got taken out, I think I'd be like, hey man, I'm playing pool. You go ahead and do your thing.
But the fact that he's naked would scare me more, because he's a naked guy who took out other guys. If he has clothes on, maybe you still would like. But the fact that he's naked is like, clearly he's insane. Like something's off in this situation. You know,
it's the same thing that we were talking about when we were talking about Fargo. A man is scary. A man with a bowl cut and a kilt and some combat boots
and a cotton sack over his head.
That's terrifying. Like that dude shows up, I'm just not, whatever he asks for, I'm just like, yeah, go ahead. So you got naked Arnold, and he's getting older, but man, he really stayed in shape, because he looks pretty good for an old dude with no clothes on.
Right.
He's pretty shredded up.
Yeah. No dong though.
No dong. But they imply dong, because when he walks in and he's scanning the crowd,
they imply dong.
The waitress looks down and her eyes get big.
Right. And that's another thing too. You know, I get, like, you know, he was in shape and stuff like that, but if a naked man walks into a bar, your other senses are going to override your sexual senses. Like your other senses are like, should I call the cops? Do I need to get distance? Like this guy's fucking out of his mind. Yeah, maybe you're right.
She was down. Yeah. She was down.
Yeah. I'm being the guy I hate though. I hate when people nitpick shit like that. Like it was a fun scene. It's a great story.
Well, and it has a great capper, because we know the Terminator is a Sherman tank, right? Like it's just normal attacks are just going to bounce off of it. We know that. But you have the capper where he goes outside and he's starting up the motorcycle, and the guy comes out and says, I can't let you steal the man's wheels. And that's when we get to see the Terminator's speed, because he's got the shotgun pointed right at him, and then just snatch. Like he just snatches it out of his hand, and now he's got the shotgun. The dude's like, all right, yeah, you win. Go ahead and take whatever you want. That is an unexpected cap. We expect the Terminator to not be killable and to mow through guys. What we don't expect is him to handle that in that way, where it's just his pure speed, that machine speed, where he just takes the thing away.
Right. What did you think about John Connor when you met John Connor for the first time in the movie?
I think that kid is a real tragedy, real life. A real tragedy, because I think he was very talented. I think Cameron found a really talented young actor. I thought he was really good in the movie. I thought his scenes with his mother are really well acted and touching and kind of heartbreaking. And I think he played the kid as false bravado and nothing but sorrow on the inside. And I think that comes through in the performance. And that's a subtle thing, because we talk about that with actors. Like, good actors play two things, right? That you're always playing the thing you're projecting to other people, but you're also playing the thing that you're hiding from other people. And you want to play both of those in every scene. And I think the kid in this movie, he pulls that off. I see the heartbreak in him, the sorrow in him, but he's all false bravado on the outside. Like where he's playing, the I don't give a fuck guy on the outside. And I think he was very talented. And I think, like many Hollywood stories with young actors getting immediate, huge, visible success, it's very hard to hang on to who you are as a person when that happens. And I think he's one of those guys who couldn't. And it's too bad.
Did you ever see American History X?
Yeah. And I thought he was great in it.
He was so good in that movie.
Yeah, he's great in that movie.
And, watching this movie, John, I feel like this movie is John Connor, the young John Connor, and whoever that fucking dude is they cast to be the older John Connor with the fucking scar down his face and
big scar on his face.
He doesn't even talk, but I'm like, that's John Connor. That is the John Connor I fucking see. All the John Connors since then, and I don't even remember if I even watched all the Terminator movies since then. None of the John Connors work like I still see this as John Connor when they're in there. But what was also, from a character's perspective, is he was, definitely damaged, definitely had a lot of issues with his mother and his mother going insane, or who he thinks she's going insane. But he's also highly intelligent and resourceful, and you can see the tools that will make him the leader of the human race, going in the future.
His parents are Kyle Reese, who is a badass warrior from the future, incredibly resourceful, incredibly resilient. And his mother is the only person who went up against the Terminator and lived. So yeah, he's got some good genetics for being a badass, resourceful kid, right?
And the setup of like the two Terminators, they're after John Connor. I just want to make one note though. The foster parents. Oh, by the way, I don't remember the actress's name, but she was in Aliens. She was the
Jeanette
one.
Goldstein.
Yeah, Jeanette Goldstein.
Yeah, she was Vasquez.
She's the mom, but when she was like, as being a parent now, when she's like, hey, could you take out the trash? And he's like, ramming this thing like he can't hear. And then he's like, she's when he says his stepfather's a dick and like to this friend, I'm like, I will yank that motherfucker off that dirt bike and make his ass. And because when I was younger, I was like, yeah, they're dicks. But now watching him, like, he's the fucking dick. He's the one that's not. What a little shit. They're taking care of her. They seem to be decent parents.
They're foster parents, right?
Yeah, they're foster parents. But
being a foster parent is a hard job, and we should give good foster parents nothing but help and support because they're doing a really hard job. And I feel bad for them that they got this obnoxious kid out there.
And I think foster parents could be worse than what he has.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, and foster parents take a bad rap in movies. I mean,
that's why I qualified it by saying good foster parents are. I think they're doing an important thing, and we should give them the help that they need.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some bad foster parents, but these do not seem to be bad foster parents. They seem to be the good ones.
The good ones.
The Jeanette Goldstein character she seems very kind to, she's like, she's trying to be a good mom.
And then, he goes to the ATM machine and it shows his resourcefulness. They set up for something that's going to happen later. They go to the arcade. They're spending their money. This sequence, starting at the arcade when the T-1000 is looking for him and his buddy's like, hey, man, a cop's looking for you. And again, like you think about action movies, this is one of the most important action movies of the 90s.
Oh, yeah. Everybody was ripping this thing off for 10 years.
And it's interesting. You watch this movie and you go back and you're like, oh, this was the first of these because it was the origin of this look, this feel, these sequences, these action sequences. And it was such an important movie. When you see the T-1000 get shot in those holes and they close back up, and when he walks through the prison bars and just like that, the opening things of like that, I was like, everybody in the theater was like, mouth was on the floor. Nobody's seen anything like that. The Abyss, you had that face thing or whatever. That's the only
tentacle, the water tentacle.
Yeah. But what they did, and it holds up. You watch it now and it's still compelling to watch.
Yep. Yeah. No, it obviously the technology has gotten better. And if you made those exact sequences today, it'd be a little smoother, a little more, a little more photorealistic for sure. Because but you got to remember, fucking invented that technology. I mean, he's the first guy to use it in filmmaking. I mean, the water tentacle in the Abyss is the first of that liquid CGI technology I think ever put on film. And it's amazing how good it looks considering how early in the technology development he was using it.
I think in some ways it was something grittier or real about it compared to like overly polished CGI now.
I think part of it is the way he shot it because he knew, and this is what I'm talking about, this being one of the best directed movies ever. He knew the limitations of the technology. I mean, he knew that. And if you watch those scenes, he shoots it in a way that tends to hide the imperfections or hide the limitations of it. It's very cleverly shot. And because of that, you get the sort of the Jaws thing where he's only using it in specific scenes. He's only using it when you get the most impact out of it. And he's hiding the imperfections of it with filmmaking. And now that the CGI technology is perfect, people have just given up on trying to like use it cleverly. They just put it in everything. They shoot it head on. They shoot it well lit. And I don't know. There's no cleverness to it now. It's just, any idiot with a computer at home can do these amazing CGI things. And so now everybody's sticking it in everything.
Yeah. But let's talk about that action sequence for a little bit. When we learn for the first time that Arnold Schwarzenegger is a good guy, he goes up against the T-1000, and then you're like, oh shit, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like the Terminator, because we're so used to the Terminator being the baddest motherfucker in the movie. And then you see this and you're like, wait, what? Like, and then when it gets shot, like when there's like holes in it, it squeals like a monster. It goes, Like, it makes that sound, and it's like, oh my God. And it's fucking grabbing the Terminator, and like fucking blades are coming out of his hand. You're like, oh, the Terminator's vulnerable to this guy.
Well, you don't get the sense that the T-1000 can really, at least in the early scenes, that the T-1000 can really hurt the Terminator. Because all you can make is like knives and stuff. And we know knives don't work on the Terminator. So, but you also get the sense that nothing the Terminator do is going to hurt this thing. And the thing doesn't have to kill the Terminator. The thing just has to kill John
Connor. Yeah.
So it creates this sense of vulnerability, not because we think the T-1000 is going to kill Arnold, but because we think it's all going to be almost impossible for Arnold to stop this thing from killing John. Because there's nothing you do slows it down, and the buildup of the scene, it leads to the big chase with the truck, the big cement truck, and the motorcycle, and all that stuff is happening where the T-800 is trying to get John away, throws him on the motorcycle, they take off on the he's chasing John, he snatches John off of his motorcycle. Now they're on the same motorcycle together. The big cement truck comes crashing through the wall, and it's down in the aqueduct with them. All that stuff happens. It feels like the first Terminator when the Terminator went into the cop station, went in the police station. And it's like, nothing you do is going to stop this thing. They're shooting it. Like, all the cops are unloading on it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care. It's just mowing them down. And that sense of like the inevitability of its murdering you. Like, it's a nightmare. You can't do anything. And this sequence, in addition to being like a huge action sequence, also there's that sense of inevitability. Nothing Arnold does slows this thing down. Nothing that Arnold does hurts it in any way. And it's just stealing cement trucks, and it's trying to run them over and all that stuff. And then it builds up to that moment where he blows the cement truck up, right? And you get the huge fireball, and then they ride away. And you're like, okay, well, I remember this from the first movie when they blew Arnold up, and there was the huge fireball, and then the skeleton comes out, the metal skeleton comes out. And we get this movie's version of that, where the just sort of generic metallic, no features thing walks out of the fire and then just turns back into the cop with no damage on it. And you're like, oh, like in the first movie, when the Terminator got blown up, it took damage. It was kind of fucked up, but it could still do stuff. This, he walks out of the fire, there's nothing. There's no damage of any kind. So even blowing him up in a huge fiery truck explosion is not having an effect. So we get that sense of like, this thing is way worse than the one in the first movie was. It's way harder to damage. It's way harder to get away from. It can look like anybody. It really sets the stakes for the rest of the movie off of that.
What's terrifying, and I think like they're building off that Michael Myers unstoppable force that's coming after you. But what terrifies me, and I thought about it, is they never, like in the first one, the Terminator, and then this one, they don't get discouraged. Yeah. So like if there's a human bad guy and he's always like, God damn it, or whatever, like if he misses something, then there's a little bit of vulnerability. There's a little bit of like, oh, this is, this person can be beatable. But the T-1000 is just 100 miles an hour, full speed ahead, never gets discouraged. Even when they knock him off the back of the police car and his blades go everywhere, he just zords back and he just keeps on going. He keeps going and going and going. And that's terrifying, that unstoppable force that doesn't get discouraged and it has no weaknesses or vulnerabilities.
Yeah, because you're not gonna convince it to stop chasing you.
You can't talk it out of it. Or he's not going to be like, it's not like a few of his plans aren't going to work and he's like, fuck this. I'm going home. Like, I'm out of here.
He's like, you know what? I tried and I failed, so I'm just going to go back to my old job.
We get to the hospital with Sarah Connor. I think that you were spot on what you said. And there's something about her performance that I really liked the first time I saw it when I was a kid, but watching this time that I was bumping up against. And I think that what was so interesting about her in the first one was her humanity, and I think that's part of her strength. And I think her being purely like it almost felt as if it was one note in the sense of like, I'm a crazy person and I'm like this tough and hardened person. There was variances in the scene. There were moments.
My interpretation of what's happening there is, I think, different from yours. I'm not saying you're wrong at all, but I'm just saying, I think my interpretation is different. My interpretation is that what Sarah Connor has done over the last 15 years is turn into the thing she hates. She has tried to turn herself into a Terminator. Cold, unfeeling, quick to violence. I think that's what she thought she needed to be to protect John, and she turned herself into that. And that climaxes, and this is why I don't think it's one note, because the climax of that is when she finally gets a chance to do the thing that she's been dreaming of doing for 15 years. Goes after Dyson, the guy who invents the technology that becomes Skynet. You watch that scene, she's a Terminator. The way he films her firing into the house, drawing her pistol, walking into the house, she moves the way Arnold did in the first movie. It's that machine-like, implacable. I have one job. I'm gonna wade through people and reach down his throat and pull his heart out. Right? It's that, and I think that moment is what all of the stuff before it has been building to. This is the thing she turned herself into over 15 years, and now she has a mission, and she's going to go do that mission, and that will be, that will end her journey, which sets up for the moment when John stops her, and she breaks for the first time, and we see her break.
Yeah,
and 15 years of loss and frustration and pain and terror about the future all sort of comes flooding out in that moment.
And, I think one note was the wrong way to say it. And that's not, but what I think that those 15 years she's created what you were just saying, that she has become the thing that she hates. And I think that she was so severed from who we saw in the first movie that there was a little bit of me looking for a little bit of a semblance of that first person. And even when she breaks, it's the new person breaking in the new mentality. And it's a nervous breakdown as opposed to like the humanity that she has in for Miles, So when I remember when I watched it for the first time, I remember a part of like the selling of it, like, oh, Sarah Connor, she's a bad motherfucker now. And you see her like doing the pull-ups and how I think they even in the Guns N' Roses thing.
And she's all shredded up when she's doing those pull-ups.
She's all shredded and she's sweating and it's like, fuck yeah. And then you see it at the time and it all works, And again, like when movies hit at the right time and where everybody is in our collective consciousness, that really works. And it worked at the time and I was into it. But now watching it later when I had, however many years to really reflect on it and think on it, I watch it and I still am impressed, by her and her performance, but I want to see a little bit of the first Sarah Connor in her. And some people could argue, well, when she breaks and has that thing, you see that. You see the thing, you see the person that she's become, you see all the pain and the trauma. I mean, the fucking Terminator killed her love and clawed his way and almost killed, that's going to fuck up your head. And so that it makes sense story-wise and it makes sense there, but there's just something about that I miss about the original Sarah Connor that I wanted to see in there somewhere, and I didn't see it.
I understand your impulse, but I don't know if it would have been believable. Because this is a person who has spent 15 years waiting for the world to end. That's a lot. And she knows her job is to protect John. She can't. He's out there somewhere in the world. The end of the world is coming. Picture, if you knew for a fact that a nuclear war is going to start on some future date, you had no doubt that date is when it was going to happen, and you knew you had to protect your family from it, and then you got picked up for a crime and locked in jail, and you were going to be in jail when it happened. Think about the incredible emotional stress that would be. I need to be out there. I need to be protecting them. I know what's coming. I know the danger that's coming, and I can't do anything to help them. I see why that would break you. And I think the script does a nice job with setting that up in that first scene of her where she's being very calm and she's being very gentle. And she's like, yes, I've learned a lot.
When I see that, I'm like, why didn't you do that the whole fucking time? Why didn't you're capable, you're smart enough, what the impact is that if you're screaming at them saying that there's a war coming and you're not paying attention, you blow your mind, that's going to take you away from John Connor. That's going to you up.
I get so the way I read the scenes is that she was arrested and was placed in a psychiatric care facility in lieu of prison. that they determined she was not competent for prison. They sent her to the psychiatric care facility instead, but it's basically jail. She's in jail, but she's in the psychiatric version of jail. And even when that happens, like, even though you don't, you're not doing a strict jail sentence, they're not going to let you out before some amount of time has passed. And I think what we're seeing is she's up, like, this is a parole hearing, right? This is, they're reviewing whether or not she needs to remain in the psychiatric care facility, because the potential to be paroled is possible at this point. And this is her attempt to get parole. Like, this is read in Shawshank Redemption in the first parole hearing, where he's explaining that he's okay and he's no danger to society and you should let him out now. But they still don't let him go. But, that, I think this is that, where she's explaining to the parole board, I'm okay now and you can let me out and I'm no danger to society.
It is that. You're right. Yeah. I mean, that is what it is.
And I think what is driving her over the top at the end of the scene is, she starts screaming about, she has to get out because John's out there and nobody's protecting him. And the world's going to end. And she's spent 15 years living with the knowledge that if John doesn't survive, humanity doesn't survive. Because that's what Reese told her, right? That John is the only reason humanity survived at all. And think of the emotional, psychological pressure of that. I get why she breaks. Like, I get it.
Oh, there's no question. Again, like, from a story perspective, it's all covered. It's all well done. Probably my favorite moment in the movie is when Sarah Connor goes to that whole thing of escaping, putting the Drano to the worst psychiatrist in the world.
The worst psychiatrist in the world.
Worst. And the whole thing about, like, breaking loose, and that whole sequence was fascinating and interesting. But when she's running in Terminator and Arnold Schwarzenegger walks out of the elevator.
She falls down and slides on the floor and backing up from him.
She loses her breath.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's backing up so fast before it could come. And that's like one of the great moments.
It is a fantastic sequence, because she's bookended by, you got the T-800 that murdered the love of her life and has probably haunted. You got to think she's been having nightmares about that thing for 15 years, right?
Yeah.
You got that on one end, and on the other end, you got the fucking liquid metal cop walking through the bars, and then the gunfight sort of over the top of her. That's like, if she wasn't already in a psychotic break, that'd be enough to do it.
And then he has that reversal of "come with me if you want to live."
Yeah, yeah. And the whole, what the fuck was that? What is that thing? What I love about this character, the character of Sarah Connor in this movie, is the minute she recognizes that the threat is the T-1000, and that at least right now the T-800 is not the threat, at least for this moment, she just goes in full combat mode, man. She's grabbing the gun. She's like laying down suppressing fire. She's like,
oh yeah.
I mean,
she's like, I guess we're working together. Like doing all that.
Because like, the minute she assesses the situation, she just goes in soldier mode.
Yeah.
She might have to take that thing out later, but for right now, that thing is worse.
Yeah. If it was the original T-800 that was in the first movie and in the second one, it would be like, damn, you've changed. I'm glad I'm not fighting you anymore.
Yeah. Well, she has turned herself into that. Because, John even talks about how when he was a little kid, she was running with mercenary groups, right? She's like flying in helicopters in South America and running guns. And she clearly spent the 15 years between then and now developing a skill set and contacts in that world, which, you see one of her contacts later when she goes and asks for her guns back. And then you see what she's got stored away, right? Like, she clearly has spent an amount of time developing this skill set, and she's a partner for the T-800 in this sequence. Like, he counts on her. Like he recognizes, oh, there's some skills here. I can rely on her to cover me, right?
And John Connor, he was reloading. They're handing the thing back, reloading,
Yep.
And the movie has a great memory of like what John Connor knows, how he was trained. And I like the idea when Arnold's like, I'm a T-800, whatever he is. And John's like, oh, wait, my mom was telling the truth the whole fucking time? So there wasn't like this big learning curve. He was like, oh, fuck. Like, my mom's not insane. You know, she's just saying this shit. I know exactly who you are. All right, let's get this
Which we should back up a little bit, because the whole reason that they go to the psychiatric facility to rescue Sarah is predicated by that. And that moment when he sees what Arnold is, and he goes, holy shit, she wasn't crazy. She wasn't lying to me. Everything she said was true. His immediate reaction is, we have to go get her. Because now that he knows that she's not crazy, that's his immediate, like, well, I have to go get her now. Like, she's not crazy. She doesn't deserve to be in there. And that's why they go to get her out of the facility. And so I really like the moment when he says, oh, it's all true. She's not crazy. We have to go get her.
I think John did a little dick thing here, though, because these two guys minding their own business, they see that John Connor's trying to get away from this big, strong man, and they've come over, and they come over there and like, hey, are you okay, kid?
Yeah.
He's like, get lost. You know,
they're
like,
the victims.
Yeah, they're the victims.
They're the victims in this scene.
They're doing the right thing.
He is totally a dick to them. They are being nice guys trying to help this kid. And then he has Arnold beat them up. That's not cool.
But doesn't Arnold shoot their knees?
No, he just picks one up by the hair.
Oh, okay. Still, I mean, it's uncalled for.
It's uncalled for. Yeah.
But there is a bit of wish fulfillment, and part of Cameron's like the seed of the idea for the film is like, what if you had your own Terminator? What if it had to obey your orders? And like being a kid around John Connor's age watching this film.
If I was a 15-year-old with my own cyborg killing machine, I would get up to a ruckus.
Oh,
there would be a ruckus.
There'd be some, I wouldn't be taking the garbage out again. I tell you that.
No, that is absolutely correct.
That's not happening. So there is a little bit of that wish fulfillment when he finds out that
there is. But the scene, absolutely, he's the bad guy in that scene. He absolutely is.
Right. So they go get Sarah Connor from the hospital. They go out to Mexico with, I imagine, is a gun runner. They want to meet one of her old friends out there, hanging out, and then they have quite the arsenal. That's a cool gun moment when they're like, "You guys, you're on artillery." Yeah. And they go down, they climb down that thing, and they start pulling all the stuff off. Yeah. And then again, Arnold's like, "Excellent," when he sees the seven. It's just, I have to put this here. I think me watching this, the complexity of my experience was the morning of one of my favorite villains of all time, and you're of the morning of the original Terminator, and you see it, but you're not getting the thing that you love the most. But then also recognizing how genius the switch is, where this Terminator becomes a father figure to John Connor, and like John Connor's real connection to a father. And so
if you've seen, have you seen the extended version? I don't want to call it director's cut because James Cameron always says his theatrical versions are his director's cuts, but there is an extended version that includes. So if you ever got the old DVD that had the metal cover, the T2 stamped metal cover, did you ever have that? Okay. So in that set, there's a bunch of behind the scenes stuff and extra stuff. And one of the things is like an extended version of the film with a bunch of scenes that were cut. One of those scenes, I really think the movie, and I get why Cameron cut it for pacing, because it's a long scene and it's kind of a slow scene. So it kind of creates this dead spot in the middle of the film when he needs the pace to be up. So I get why he cut it, but I really feel like there's some context in this scene that helps with what you're talking about. So the scene is Terminator reveals that he's a learning machine, that he can learn new skills, but that when Skynet sends them out into the field, it turns that switch off. It doesn't want them learning new stuff once they're sent out into the field, right? Because it doesn't want them making their own decisions. It wants them to just go do their mission. And it tells them that switch can be turned on, which will allow him to learn new skills. And there's a scene where Sarah and John turn off the Terminator, take the chip out of its head, and there's a thing that they need to switch to turn the learning part back on. And Sarah tries to smash the chip, and John stops her from doing it because he's like, no, he's on our side now, can't smash it, and all this. And anyway, so they turn the switch on, they put it back in. And in the movie, that scene happens just before Arnold starts saying like "Hasta la vista, baby," and like so it's the switch has been turned on, and because it's been turned on, now he's like learning to speak the way that they do, and he's like mimicking their facial expressions and that kind of stuff.
Everything that I was saying before, it now makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the scene at the end, which is moving, when he's like, I know why you cry now, you know, where there's like I understand humanity. I understand like this is something you need to protect, and I'm not it. You need to get rid of me before that happens.
Yeah. And all of that happens after this scene I'm talking about where they turn the switch on. And I think story-wise, that scene explains a lot because it's after that Arnold starts mimicking John's facial expressions, like his grin and his little smirk, and he starts copying.
I want to go back and watch it now. That makes it really interesting.
You can probably find that scene on YouTube or something and just watch that by itself. It is an interesting scene.
Now, explain to me this. The Miles Dyson of it all. So the Miles Dyson is the guy that always and originally created Skynet, correct?
Yeah, he's the one who figured out how the chip worked.
Now
the neural net in that broken chip.
But how was Skynet created before the Terminator hand and chip was found here? And was the Miles Dyson story, or did they not go into that in the first one?
Well, but that's the paradox, right?
Yeah.
If the first Terminator coming back is the thing that allowed them to create Skynet, then how did Skynet get created before the first Terminator come back?
So, because that is my question to you, and I don't want to get into the time travel of it all, but my question to you is this a loop? Are we watching a loop? Is the Terminator coming back? Because if that is a loop, they end up destroying all chips, right? So then how would that happen? How would that be invented?
Yeah, and then they kept making Terminator movies after this. So I don't know.
So I want to avoid going into time travel at all. But
I mean, it is.
I was trying to follow the story because I was like, well, then if we're on a loop, then at the end of this movie, that would close the loop, right?
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense unless what we're saying is somebody invented Skynet without that stuff, but then after the thing, then Dyson invented it because he had the stuff, but then they named it the same thing. They still named it Skynet. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but most time travel movies just don't make any sense.
And I did, you're right though. Sarah Connor was full on Terminator when she was trying to kill.
So we get to the point where they realize that Dyson is the one who's going to invent Skynet, and that he's using these materials that they took from the original Terminator. Which one, she's pissed because that would have proven her story and that she's not crazy, but they hid it. So they let her go to a psychiatric prison rather than reveal
I'd be
the
so
fact,
mad.
right? Yeah. And then two, this is the guy who's going to make Skynet and destroy the world. So she fully activates Terminator mode. She gets her assault rifle and her gear, and she heads off into where Dyson's home is, and she's going to hunt Dyson down and kill him.
Now I've asked you this question ad nauseam. I asked you this question so many times, but I want to ask you again. You lived through what Sarah Connor lived through. Miles Dyson lives 3 houses down from you right now in your neighborhood where it is now. Yeah. What do you do?
Oh, I would smoke that dude.
You would smoke him?
I'd smoke him right in front of his wife and kid.
And would you, because like, this is a question of selfishness, because Ty is like, I don't want to go to fucking jail. I don't want to fucking, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to, like, you know, I know it's the end of the world and nuclear holocaust, but I don't want to go to jail. Would you still do it?
Oh, well, I would attempt to do it in a way that it's not obvious I'm the one who did it.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have any motive. So there's probably a good way. You'd probably think it through really clearly and then smoke them. Yeah. Interesting.
But yes, if you're the dude who's responsible for the end of the world and I know that for a fact, I'll just take you out. I mean,
yeah. I didn't think about you wouldn't have any. It's easy to get away with if you don't have motive.
If she had successfully sniped him like she was trying to do, because she was going to snipe him, right? He was sitting there working in his office and she put her red dot on the back of his head.
Yeah.
If he hadn't gotten lucky and leaned over and she missed that first shot, there would be no reason to think she was the one who did it.
Yeah, but I don't think it would have solved the problem because the hand and the chip still exist.
And I think that's the interesting thing that happens is when he reveals that they have the hand and the chip, from the original Terminator, that's when she realizes her plan wouldn't have worked. Mm-hmm. That even killing Dyson would not have stopped what was coming.
Yeah.
What I love about the scene, my favorite part of the scene, so we get all the great buildup. We get she tries to shoot him in the head. She misses because of his kid bumping his leg and he bending over. And then she just goes full Terminator mode, switches off a single fire into rock and roll. She's just hosing the house down with her assault rifle, comes in. He's making a run for it. She pulls her pistol and pops him in the shoulder. He's down.
Yeah, but hold on. The kid jumps in first.
Kid jumps in front of dad.
And then that was an interesting moment because she's like, "Get this fucking kid out of here!" Like, you know, you think that would.
No, she's waiting for mom to get the kid out of there. She's still going to pop this guy.
Yeah.
And then you have the moment where he reveals that this isn't going to work. And Sarah hands the knife to the Terminator. And she goes, "Show him," and walks away.
I love that moment.
And then Arnold just cuts all the flesh off of his forearm and just tears off the flesh from his forearm and shows him the robotic hand. And what I love about it is it skips past all the conversation.
All the exposition.
She doesn't need to talk. She doesn't need to explain.
Yeah.
She just shows him the hand, and Dyson, you see that moment where he's like, "Oh shit."
That's a perfect example of show don't tell.
Show don't tell.
Show don't tell. Like he could have went into this whole monologue about this, that. And they're like, I just cut the fucking hand off and show him the arm.
What I love about it is they imply that the monologue happened, but he cuts the hand off and he holds it up and he goes, "Now listen to me very carefully." And then they cut away. So we know he said all that stuff, right? Yeah. We know he told him about the future and Cyberdyne and Skynet.
Because Miles Dyson is now like, all right, they're fucking hauling ass to the thing. He's like, we're shutting this bitch down.
He's in. Like immediately. Like he's in on the plan. But as a way to jump past all the boring exposition scenes, it is perfectly done. You're the guy, you have a robot hand in your lab that you're trying to figure out. You know it's more complex than anything we can make now. You're trying to decode it. We're about to tell you a crazy story you're not going to believe. The guy tears his arm up and goes, "Look, I have that hand. Now listen to me carefully." And then we cut away. We don't need to hear him explaining. We don't need to hear about Skynet. We don't need to hear all that shit.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to the wife is going, "If all of this is true, what do we do now?" She's on board. She fully is on board. The mom, the wife is there. She's like, "Aren't we fixing it right now? Aren't we stopping it right now?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get to Cyberdyne. I think the one-liner that works is when he shoots the guards and he doesn't kill them and he walks back because it comes from character's point of view. And he's like, "He'll live."
He'll live.
And I think that's the funniest line in the thing because it is within the context. But I guess I have to rewatch it now that I know about that scene where he can learn.
Go onto YouTube and see if you can find that scene.
I felt like they were catering to an audience to make it like an amusement park of the movie.
I think there is an element of that. The other thing too is one of the things that's true when you have a big budget, and this was a big budget movie at the time. This was an expensive movie, and the studio was making a big bet on it. There is pressure to broaden the audience. And I think
still are though? I didn't know that.
Oh, it's R. Yeah, it's R. I think some of what you're seeing there is that broadening the audience, kind of put more humor in, put more of that kind of stuff in that broadens the audience. I mean, it's R almost entirely for language. Well, language and violence, I guess. But Sarah cusses up a storm.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, Sarah. So back then you could only have like 1 or 2 F-bombs, and Sarah's dropping 1 or 2 F-bombs every time she opens her mouth.
Every scene. Let's rush to the Cyberdyne sequence of it all, so we can get to the end. I want to spend time on the on that last decision that they have to make, and basically they go there to destroy the hand and the chip.
Yeah, they're going to blow the whole building up.
You're going to blow the whole building up, and then there's like this undercover security force that comes in and fighting.
That's not an undercover security force. That's a SWAT team from the police.
Oh, is it? I thought it was like, I thought they worked for Cyberdyne.
No,
I thought it was like Cyberdyne straight thing. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a SWAT team for the police. Led by Hank from Breaking Bad.
Is it really?
That's Hank.
So he was always a cop.
He was always a cop. So after he got shot in the knee, he went over to the DEA.
You know what they should have done in Breaking Bad is have him walk with a limp.
With a limp. Because that time he got shot in the knee by a terrorist.
And then every now and then reference that moment, at Cyberdyne. How did you feel about the Terminator not killing anybody? And I know, like, from a story point, it makes sense and everything like that. But what did you think about that?
I think it would not have fit the tone of this movie and the sort of heroic nature of John and Sarah if the Terminator's just mowing down cops indiscriminately.
Yeah, and
I just don't think it would work. I don't think it would.
It's so smart. You look at it and you're like, you might be disappointed because you're like, man, I want to see the Terminator be the Terminator, but it has to be that way.
T-1000 is smoking some dudes.
Yeah, it has to be that way. And the T-1000, and by the way, I forgot that T-1000 isn't in it that much. He wasn't in it. It was much, maybe because he's so expensive.
Yeah.
But there's this whole Michael Dawson in Mexico, Cyberdyne, fighting the cops and everything. He shows up at the end of that whole thing. He's wasn't a part of this whole thing. And I think it was because every time he's on screen, it's like $1 million a second. Like it was so expensive.
Well, anytime he's not just Robert Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
anytime he's
exactly.
like the metal version. Yeah. One of the things I love about it is the T-1000 makes no attempt to stop them from blowing up the building because that's not his mission. Yeah. His mission is to kill John. If he'd been there trying to stop them from blowing up the building, it would have been weird. I like that the T-1000 is so single-minded. He only has one thing. He has one mission. Kill John Connor.
You know what? I'd never even thought about that. Like he's like, I don't give a fuck about all my machines getting killed or whatever. Like that's not my
you want. That's not my mission.
I just got to kill this fucking guy.
Yeah.
Yep. I wonder what would happen once he kills him. Like, is he like, oh, okay, what do I do now? Does he go to, does he retire?
Does everybody just disappear? Like, does
like self-destruct?
Or no, just disappear because the future where he was sent back doesn't exist anymore.
Well, then that would be the case as soon as they exploded the building.
Yeah.
So what if the T-1000 had a picture of his machine family?
And they're fading.
They're all like fading.
It's got a picture of the Cyberdyne computer, a Skynet computer, and it's slowly fading.
It's slowly fading. And he's like, I got to get to this fucking thing. That'd be amazing. And then they have their last fight and they go back to an industrial warehouse thing. That big shootouts have to end in that place.
Yeah. What Roger Ebert used to call a steam factory.
Yeah.
Like the movie factory that only seems to produce steam. Like, what did they make here? I don't know. Steam.
Like in Commando, where they were literally in a steam factory where he threw a pipe through and steam came through his chest. And he's like, he let off some steam.
Yeah.
I want to, since we said Conan, I want to just rattle off something right now. This is the run that Arnold Schwarzenegger, I forget what a mega, people talk about The Rock and Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is Conan the Destroyer, Terminator, Red Sonja, Commando, Stop the Madness, Raw Deal, Predator, Running Man, Red Heat, Twins, Total Recall, Kindergarten Cop, Terminator 2. I mean, some of those movies were monsters. Like 4 of those were like monsters. And one of them was a comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a phenomenon. And this T2 was, again, like, he was at the top of his game. He was the biggest movie star in the war.
Yeah. And it was an expensive movie for the time. And it made like $1 jillion.
Right.
Like the return on investment for this movie. I mean, I'm sure Arnold got a little profit sharing on this to be in it. I would be willing to bet Arnold personally made like $50-100 million off this movie.
I think they gave him a jet for this movie. Like a full fucking jet.
Well, that was just a bonus for agreeing to do it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No, I mean, the volume of success, the volume of money that was just pouring into Arnold's pockets for this 15, 20-year period. I mean, I've never read that he was, but I bet he's a billionaire.
Yeah. I was reading about him and him getting started and everything. And what Arnold became Arnold without the benefit of Arnold. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because like The Rock is the
Rock is riding Arnold's coattails for sure.
Coattails.
Yep.
And to think about Arnold getting to LA in the 70s, that's back when The Godfather and Dog Day Afternoon, like all these like, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Robert Redford, Paul Newman, like these normal sized movie star guys and gritty and raw and dirty. And imagine Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger wanting to be an actor with a thick Australian accent who was like juiced out of his mind, massive, massive muscles. And like the fact that he had the vision and because he says like everybody was like, what are you talking about? Like he would go to acting classes and be like, you want to be a leading man? Because he was very clear. I want to be a leading man. And they're like, you're a circus, like, you know, and this is not gonna, but his force of will and his charisma and his ability like forged a path to create this thing. And it just so happens he was also ideally suited for Conan. Yeah. And Conan became
and the door he opened by doing that, a lot of guys have walked through that door, including people, megastars like you said, The Rock. The Rock absolutely walked through a door that Arnold had opened 30 years before that.
I would even say Sylvester Stallone did, because Sylvester Stallone used to be like, he was like a normal person, like a really gritty, great actor.
There's two Stallones, and there's, you know, like in the multiverse, there's two different versions, because there's the Stallone that was a thoughtful writer and director, the guy who made Rocky. There's that Stallone. There's a alternate universe version where he kept doing that. We kept making that kind of movie, doing that kind of performance, making those sorts of films. And I think that in that reality, Stallone stops being an actor and becomes primarily a writer-director. I think in that reality, that's what he does. That's his path. And then there's the reality where Arnold comes and blows up Hollywood by doing his thing. And then we get the Stallone we get where he starts juicing out of his mind. We go from muscular but normal looking Rambo 1 to, as Robert Downey Jr. says, shredded like a julienne salad in Rambo 2, right? And I agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. I think that version of Stallone exists because of Arnold.
Yeah. But the last beat of this movie, what you have told me about that missing scene has really changed the way that I look at it, because knowing what I know about the information I have about the first movie and how he behaved in the first movie, and then knowing what I know about with him coming back and being in this movie and how he started morphing into human-like behavior and even developing a sense of humor was kind of bumping me a little bit on this watch. Yeah. But the fact that it's a super learner and it can pick up and everything, that makes sense. And even to the point at the end when you can be moved by him. Yeah. And they don't fall into that, because he said, I know why you cry. You know, I know, and it's moving. And then I was watching it closely and I was like, there better not be a fucking tear that comes out of that fucking eye. And they don't. Nope. And they don't. So it stayed true to the logic and it went all the way through. And the fact that they could take this machine, this killing machine that terrified you, that was Mike Myers in the first movie, and then go on an arc where he becomes a father figure to this kid and resembles love, whatever that could be, for the machine, like mimicking things. And then he's saying at the end,
world, it was the sanest choice.
And then, but he says at the end, he's like, I can't do that. You know, I can't do while your eyes are wet. I can't do that. Yeah. And if you want to get rid of this, this is the last, this is the thing that's got to go. Yep. Throws him in the lava.
Part of the tragedy of the fact that they kept cranking out crappy Terminator sequels is that the last scene of Sarah and her voiceover about the future and looking at the future with a sense of hope is a beautiful scene. And it should have been the end of the Terminator franchise. Yeah. It is the coda to the entire idea that, like, now finally, after 15 years of living with the idea of impending disaster hanging over my head, now I have hope.
Yeah. I thought that, I again, like you, the other Terminator movies didn't exist. I might have watched one or two, but I have no memory of them. Yeah. But my kids they're so into Terminator now. They saw 1 and 2. They want to watch all the other ones. And I was looking at the trailers trying to figure, and I'm like, wait a minute, Arnold Schwarzenegger came back for a Terminator? I'm like, what? Yeah, and he's old? And like, wait, he was in lava. Like, what T-800 was aged?
It gets increasrisingly stupid as the franchise goes on.
When something is primarily motivated by money, then it doesn't have any integrity,
I think the phrase artistically bankrupt is where that is the right phrase for that.
Because this Terminator, it felt properly motivated. Like the movie was such a phenomenon, and it didn't really fully express what like people's appetite for it, right? And then there's a really creative, interesting take on how to build on that story and create this thing. I do wish they would have kept in the learning thing. I think that would have been
so watch the scene. It's a long scene, and it's in an interesting scene, but it's got no sort of motor to it, and it happens right in the middle of the movie where there's already a lot of non-actiony stuff. So the sort of dead middle of the movie where there's no action happening, this scene really makes that long. And I get why he did it. He was like, I got to pace this up. I gotta get back to the other stuff. And so there's a throwaway line where he says, I have a neural net learning computer. He puts that in and then just leaves it at that, like to sort of say, yeah, he can learn stuff, and then doesn't show the rest.
Cool. This was a fun one to do. Joseph, you want to do top 5?
Yep. Give me a second here.
Who's the dipshit now, you jock douchebag?
Man,
I'm really the dipshit.
That really changed everything.
So we're doing the worst movie sequels.
Okay, so let me see.
I want to see if I have the same one as you.
I want to see if mine is even. Oh, yeah, mine's on here. Yep. Just go ahead and immediately put right to the top of the list.
Don't say Highlander
it. I want to see the quickening.
Oh, come on, dude! I wanted to see if we had the same one.
Well, what is yours?
It wasn't that one. That wasn't on my radar. But I gotta. This kind of hurts a little bit, but I had to say Escape from L.A.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And not because it's the most terrible movie, but because it is. If you've seen Escape from New York, Escape from LA is so disappointingly worse than that.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then it was also like one of the things I was looking forward to because John Carpenter and Kurt Russell was back.
So much expectation. Yeah. Caddyshack 2 should definitely go up there.
Yes.
What a terrible movie that is.
It's complex too because it also it goes with like how great the first one is and how much the expectations in the second one and how big you were let down.
Yeah. And as much as we love Jason, Speed 2.
I can't be a part of that. I think Jaws of Revenge should be close to number 1.
That's number 4.
But that's number 4.
That's number 4.
Well, the Jaws sequel.
Jaws 2?
Yes.
Jaws 2 is pretty bad.
But the thing is the first Jaws is probably in my top 3 favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, it's the first summer blockbuster.
Yeah, it's one of
the Jaws literally redefined how movies are made.
And it works on every level. Character, story, excitement, the machine, the shark, and everything like that. And 2 just had none of the special magic that made it work. Spielberg wasn't involved. It was just such a letdown from how great it was, how great the first one was.
So is Jaws 2 the number 5 or anything else in here?
I would put Jaws 2.
So Mortal Kombat Annihilation is a terrible movie. And I know people have a lot of affection for the first Mortal Kombat, but it's a terrible movie too. It is a terrible sequel in a terrible series of movies.
Breaking 2 has a great name, Electric Boogaloo. So
I've never seen
that one out of it. I didn't see Exorcist 2.
It's pretty bad. It's not great. I've never seen Grease 2. Iron Man 2 is incredibly disappointing because the first one was so great. But Iron Man 2 is not objectively a terrible movie.
Grease 2 is really a really bad movie, but Michelle Pfeiffer is so beautiful in the movie that it keeps it off the list. The Sting? They did The Sting too?
Yeah. I've never made it all the way through it. It's so bad.
Wait, like Redford and
the Honeymooners.
Jackie Gleason?
Yeah, Jackie Gleason. Yeah.
I would put Jaws 2 up there, yep.
Well, don't hold it against the patrons. They went with, beyond just the sequel, I guess threequel and all of that. So this would be the alternate version of the top 5. But
yeah, see, they got number 1 because anybody who isn't a terrible human being knows that Highlander 2 is number 1 on this list.
That one guy, he loves
that one guy thinks Highlander 2 is a great movie. but fuck that guy, because this Highlander 2 is not a great movie.
That one guy, this would be his greatest sequels list of all time.
This would be his favorite movies list.
This would be his favorite movies.
They got 3 of the movies that you guys mentioned. I mean, Jaws Revenge, Escape from L.A., Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
Oh, that's a heartbreaker.
My problem with Alien 3 through 6 is that they don't exist. So there, it's sort of now we're judging imaginary movies, which I don't think is fair.
But what leaves a worse taste in your mouth? Alien 3 through 6 or all the Terminator movies after Terminator 2?
That is tough. That's like saying which leaves the worst taste in your mouth? This 3-month-old corpse flesh or this pile of poop? And you're like, well, they're both pretty bad.
Yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out. Please like, subscribe. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.